Hello friends! This expedition is brought to you by USA Coins History. In the fragile years after the American Revolution, when the ink on the Constitution was still drying and the Treasury itself was little more than an idea, the young United States faced a problem that could not be solved with speeches. It needed money. Not promises. Not paper. Metal. Something that carried weight in the hand and authority in the marketplace. In 1792, as Congress passed the Coinage Act and established a national mint in Philadelphia, a small silver coin was authorized that few today would consider powerful. It was modest in size, delicate in presence, and yet bold in intention. The half-dime struck in silver and valued at 5 cents would become one of the earliest tangible expressions of federal authority. It did not roar like a gold eagle or command attention like a silver dollar. Instead, it whispered stability into the daily transactions of a restless republic. The decision to create the half-dime was not decorative. It was strategic. The American economy in the 1790s was fragmented, chaotic, and vulnerable. Spanish-milled dollars circulated widely, alongside British copper, foreign silver, and private tokens of uneven quality. Trust was fragile. The Coinage Act attempted to impose order by defining weights, measures, and standards based on a bimetallic system. Silver would anchor everyday commerce. Within that structure, the half-dime served a practical purpose. It addressed the need for small change in markets where ordinary citizens bought flour, tobacco, and cloth. Without fractional silver, trade slowed. Prices became awkward. Barter crept back into practice. Congress understood that a coin valued at half a dime, 5 cents, could smooth the rhythm of commerce and demonstrate that the federal government had both the will and the capacity to produce reliable money. The first half-dimes were struck in 1792, even before the Philadelphia Mint building was fully completed. These early pieces, now known as the 1792 half-dimes, carry a story that borders on legend. Tradition holds that Martha Washington herself may have supplied some of the silver used for the striking. Whether romanticized or factual, the symbolism mattered. The coin featured liberty with flowing hair on one side and an eagle on the other. Expressions of national identity cast into silver. Fewer than 2,000 are believed to have been struck. They were not mass-produced for widespread circulation. They were statements, proof that the United States could create coinage under its own authority. The government was signaling to foreign powers and skeptical citizens alike that the Republic would not depend indefinitely on Spanish or British coin. Yet symbolism alone could not sustain the half-dime. After those tentative beginnings, regular production began in 1794 and 1795 with a flowing hair design. The mint operated under immense pressure. Equipment was crude. Skilled engravers were scarce. Silver bullion supplies fluctuated. Every batch of coins required careful weighing to meet statutory standards. When errors occurred, they were not minor embarrassments. They threatened the credibility of the entire monetary system. A coin underweight could undermine trust. A coin overweight strained limited resources. In these early years, the half-dime was not just a piece of currency. It was a test of administrative competence. In a nation still experimenting with federal power, the political stakes were high. Alexander Hamilton's financial policies aimed to centralize economic authority and stabilize credit. Opponents feared federal overreach. Each coin struck at the mint became physical evidence of national ambition. The half-dime small, though it was, traveled into the pockets of farmers, dock workers, and merchants. It crossed state lines without asking permission from local governments. It carried the word liberty and the year of issue, quietly reinforcing the idea that Americans shared a common economic framework. In markets where state sovereignty remained a sensitive subject, that mattered. The coin served as a silent ambassador of federal unity. By 1796, the design evolved into the draped bust type, reflecting a desire for refinement. The crude aesthetic of earlier issues gave way to more balanced portraiture. This was not vanity. A more sophisticated design suggested maturity. The United States wanted its coinage to stand alongside European standards, not beneath them. As the half-dime changed appearance, it also reflected shifting artistic tastes and political confidence. Engravers worked under pressure to perfect dies that would withstand repeated striking. Die cracks, misalignments, and weak strikes were common. Each flaw risked criticism. Yet production continued. year after year, reinforcing the nation's determination to standardize its money supply. The half-dime's composition: 89.24% silver and 10.76% copper under the original standard, adhered strictly to the specifications outlined in law. Precision was essential because silver coins were valued for their intrinsic metal content. If the market price of silver rose above the face value of the coin, melting became tempting. If it fell, hoarding patterns shifted. The half-dime existed in constant tension with global silver markets. Its fate was not sealed within American borders alone. International bullion flows influenced whether these coins circulated freely or disappeared into melting pots. In this way, the half-dime was tied to forces larger than itself, subject to economic currents that few citizens fully understood. As the 18th century closed and the 19th began, the half-dime matured alongside the Republic. The heraldic eagle reverse replaced earlier designs, projecting strength and continuity. By 1805, production paused for several years, due to limited bullion deposits and shifting mint priorities. The absence of half-dimes during certain years did not mean they were forgotten. Instead, it revealed the fragility of early mint operations. The federal government depended on private individuals to deposit silver bullion for coinage. When deposits slowed, minting slowed. The half-dime's existence depended on trust, not only in government, but in citizens willing to convert raw silver into official coin. When production resumed in 1829 with the capped bust design, the country had changed. Expansion westward increased demand for small silver coins. Commerce intensified. The half-dime once again found relevance in daily trade. Its diameter remained small, but its importance in facilitating transactions grew. Merchants relied on it to make exact change. Workers received wages partly in silver. The coin passed through thousands of hands, rarely preserved, almost never admired. Its life was one of service, not spectacle. Yet each exchange reaffirmed federal authority in tangible form. In 1837, amid financial reform and adjustments to silver standards, the ceded liberty half-dime was introduced. The Coinage Act of 1837 slightly altered the silver content to align more precisely with international ratios. This change reflected a broader concern about specie flows and economic balance. The half-dime adapted, as it always had, absorbing policy decisions into its metallic core. It carried a seated figure of liberty, calm and composed, shield at her side. The imagery suggested stability at a time when banking crises and economic contractions threatened public confidence. The Panic of 1837 rippled across the nation. Banks failed, credit tightened, yet silver coins like the half-dime retained intrinsic value. In uncertain times, people trusted metal more than paper. The Civil War introduced new strain. As conflict escalated in 1861, specie payments were suspended. Gold and silver coins, including half-dimes, vanished from circulation as citizens hoarded precious metal. Paper currency and fractional notes filled the gap. To half-dime's disappearance from daily commerce revealed its perceived reliability. When fear spread, people clung to silver. The coin that once facilitated trade now symbolized security. Its absence complicated transactions, forcing the government to issue base metal coins and paper substitutes. The half-dime had become a victim of its own intrinsic worth. In 1865, as war ended and the nation sought reconstruction, a new coin emerged. The nickel 5-cent piece, made primarily of copper and nickel. It did not depend on silver. It was cheaper to produce and less likely to be hoarded. Gradually, the half-dime's relevance declined. By 1873, under the Coinage Act of that year, the half-dime was officially discontinued. After more than 80 years of service, it slipped quietly out of production. No grand ceremony marked its end, yet its retirement signaled a shift in American monetary policy. The country was moving toward base metal coinage for small denominations, prioritizing practicality over intrinsic silver content. The half-dime's life spanned foundational decades. It witnessed the presidency of George Washington, the turbulence of early party politics, westward expansion, financial panics, and civil war. It began as an experiment in sovereignty and ended as a relic of a silver-based era. Throughout its existence, it balanced intention and consequence. It was created to stabilize commerce, and in doing so it tied the nation's daily transactions to global silver markets. It reinforced federal authority. It depended on private bullion deposits. It provided convenience, yet disappeared when fear gripped the economy. In quiet transactions across farms, ports, and growing cities, the half-dime carried the story of a nation striving for legitimacy. It was small enough to be overlooked, yet essential enough to matter. Every scratch, every worn edge, testified to countless exchanges between strangers, bound by shared trust in metal, stamped with liberty. As the 19th century advanced and industrial power reshaped the United States, the half-dime remained a reminder of earlier struggles. It was born in uncertainty, matured in expansion, and faded in reform. Its journey was not glamorous. It was deliberate, and in that deliberation lay its true character. The half-dime did not seek attention. It sought acceptance. Each year of production strengthened its quiet authority. Each policy change tested its resilience. In the tension between intrinsic value and public confidence, it survived longer than many expected. Its story begins not with grandeur, but with necessity. A young republic needed proof that it could govern itself economically. The half-dime answered that need in silver. Power never rests comfortably in a new nation. It shifts, negotiates, resists. And as the half-dime moved quietly through American hands in the early 19th century, forces larger than its thin silver frame began pressing in from every side. The young republic was no longer fighting for independence. It was fighting for economic control. The mint in Philadelphia operated under constraints that few citizens saw. Its authority came from Congress, yet its survival depended on bullion deposits from private citizens and banks. If merchants did not bring silver to be coined, presses stood silent. That dependency created tension. The federal government had the legal right to strike money, but not the metal itself. In years when silver flowed freely from trade or foreign coin melted into ingots, half-dimes poured from dimes. In leaner years, production slowed to a trickle. The coin's existence became a reflection of national confidence. When trust in government and markets rose, silver arrived. When suspicion grew, deposits dried up. By the early 1800s, international silver prices began to fluctuate more aggressively. The bimetallic ratio fixed by law often failed to match global markets. When American coins contained slightly more silver than their face value justified abroad, they were exported and melted. When they contained less, foreign silver flooded inward. This imbalance placed the half-dime in a precarious position. It was small, easy to ship, and efficient to melt. Each bag of coins that left American shores represented more than lost currency. It represented a weakness in federal monetary control. Congress responded slowly. Adjusting silver content required legislation, and legislation required consensus. Meanwhile, the mint struggled to maintain precision. Underweight coins would invite scandal. Overweight coins encouraged export. The half-dime lived inside this narrow margin of tolerance. Engravers and assayers worked under scrutiny, knowing that a minor miscalculation could ripple outward into public distrust. Cause led directly to consequence. A misaligned ratio led to melting. Melting led to scarcity. Scarcity led to commercial disruption. The smallest coin carried the burden of national policy. Production pauses in 1806 through 1828 exposed another weakness. For more than 2 decades, regular half-dime coinage ceased. Officially, other denominations took priority, and bullion supply patterns shifted. Unofficially, the mint wrestled with inefficiencies and political oversight. Each year without new half-dimes forced existing pieces to circulate longer, wear thinner, and disappear into hoards. By the time the capped bust design returned in 1829, the country had expanded dramatically. Population growth, increased demand for fractional silver. Markets in the West required reliable coin. The delay now had consequences. Old coins were scarce. Fresh production struggled to catch up. The capped bust half-dime reflected more than artistic change. It marked administrative recalibration. Improved steam-powered presses, introduced in the 1830s, increased striking consistency. Uniformity mattered. Citizens compared coins side by side. Inconsistency raised doubts. With more reliable machinery, the mint regained some authority. Yet the broader economic climate refused to cooperate. The Panic of 1837 struck with force. Banks collapsed. Credit contracted. Paper currency issued by private institutions lost credibility overnight. As fear spread, Americans reverted to silver and gold. The half-dime, small and practical, became a store of value rather than a medium of exchange. People withdrew coins from circulation and hid them. What began as caution became scarcity. Merchants found themselves short of change. Without fractional silver, transactions slowed. The very coin designed to ease commerce was now absent from it. Congress again intervened. The Coinage Act of 1837 slightly adjusted silver fineness from 89.24% to 90%, aligning U.S. standards more cleanly with international practice. This technical correction aimed to reduce melting incentives and stabilize flow. The half-dime absorbed the change without altering its face value, yet the underlying tension remained. Whenever global bullion prices drifted, the coin's intrinsic worth threatened to overtake its legal designation. Every fluctuation tested the system. By the 1840s and 1850s, another complication emerged. Gold discoveries in California flooded global markets with new metal. The gold supply expanded rapidly, altering the gold-to-silver ratio. Silver coins suddenly contained more value as bullion than their face suggested. Predictably, melting resumed. The half-dime once again vanished from daily trade. Merchants improvised. Some accepted worn foreign coins. Others relied on credit ledgers. The absence of small silver highlighted a recurring pattern. The coin's design was steady. Its silver content was precise. Yet global economics dictated its survival. The Coinage Act of 1853 attempted decisive action. Congress reduced the weight of subsidiary silver coins, including the half-dime, while keeping their face value unchanged. The adjustment ensured that the bullion content would remain safely below market value. Arrows appeared beside the date on 1853 issues to signal the new standard. This was not cosmetic. It was an admission that earlier ratios had failed. The federal government was asserting stronger control over fractional silver by intentionally lowering intrinsic value. As a result, half-dimes returned to circulation in greater numbers. Melting subsided. Stability, at least temporarily, returned. Yet reducing silver content introduced philosophical conflict. Some critics argued that diminishing intrinsic value weakened moral authority. Others insisted practicality outweighed purity. The half-dime stood at the center of that debate. Was money valuable because of metal or because of trust? Each legislative adjustment forced Americans to confront that question. The coin's reduced weight signaled a shift toward fiduciary reliance. It marked a subtle step away from strict bullion equivalence. In 1861, as states seceded and conflict erupted, confidence fractured again. Banks suspended specie payments. Citizens, fearing collapse, hoarded gold and silver with renewed urgency. Even with reduced weight, the half-dime disappeared from circulation. The reason was no longer melting for profit. It was preservation for survival. Paper greenbacks, issued to finance the Union War effort, circulated widely but carried uncertainty. Silver felt permanent. That perception drained coins from the marketplace. To fill the vacuum, Congress authorized fractional paper currency. Thin notes replaced metal in daily transactions. Storekeepers accepted them reluctantly. The tactile reassurance of silver had been replaced by printed fiber. The half-dime, designed to facilitate trade, now hid in drawers and buried containers. Its silence in circulation mirrored the instability of the nation itself. By war's end in 1865, industrial expansion accelerated. Railroads stitched the continent together. Banking networks strengthened. The mint reconsidered its role in small-denomination coinage. A copper-nickel 5-cent piece, first introduced in 1866, offered practical advantages. It cost less to produce. It was less vulnerable to hoarding. It did not depend on volatile silver markets. Gradually, the half-dime faced competition, not from foreign coin, but from domestic innovation. The two coins coexisted briefly. One carried nearly a century of silver tradition. The other represented modern efficiency. Merchants favored availability. The nickel 5-cent piece circulated steadily, while silver half-dimes continued to vanish during periods of uncertainty. The contrast exposed the vulnerability of intrinsic value in a rapidly industrializing economy. Administrative decisions grew sharper. By the early 1870s, debates over silver intensified nationwide. Questions about monetary standards, gold dominance, and the role of silver in currency policy filled congressional halls. Within this larger controversy, the half-dime's fate was sealed quietly. The Coinage Act of 1873, later controversial for other reasons, discontinued the denomination. Officially, the nickel had rendered it redundant. Unofficially, it marked the culmination of decades of struggle between bullion reality and policy design. When the presses struck the final seated Liberty half-dimes in 1873, there was no dramatic farewell. No proclamation celebrated its service. Yet its disappearance carried weight. For over 80 years, it had adapted to economic storms, legislative recalibration, and war. It had been melted, hoarded, lightened, redesigned, and finally replaced. Each stage reflected a lesson learned through conflict. Fixed silver ratios led to export. Export led to scarcity. Scarcity led to reform. Reform altered intrinsic value. Altered value shifted public perception. Perception shaped circulation. Circulation determined survival. At every turn, the half-dime revealed the limits of policy against global economics. Its failure was not moral. It was structural. A small silver coin cannot resist worldwide bullion markets forever. Yet in its endurance, it demonstrated resilience. For decades, it provided Americans with a dependable medium for small exchange. It proved that federal coinage could anchor commerce, even when paper. It also exposed the cost of tying currency too closely to fluctuating metal. As industrial America emerged from Reconstruction, the half-dime belonged to another era. Its silver surface reflected candlelit shops and horse-drawn markets, not steam engines and telegraph lines. The nation moved forward. The coin stepped aside, and yet, though production ceased, consequence lingered. Millions had circulated. Thousands had been melted. A smaller number survived, tucked away by accident or intention. They carried ware from markets long vanished. Their scarcity, once a burden to commerce, would soon become a magnet for collectors. The half-dime had lost its official voice in circulation, but it was about to gain a new one in history. Scarcity rarely announces itself at the moment it is created. It forms quietly, often during periods of neglect. When the final half-dimes were struck in 1873 and the denomination slipped into retirement, few paused to consider what would remain. Millions had circulated. Countless pieces had been worn thin in pockets and purses. Others had vanished into melting pots during silver booms. What survived did so by accident, by indifference, or by foresight. Over time, that uneven survival would transform an overlooked coin into a prize of American numismatics. In the late 19th century, coin collecting matured from casual curiosity into organized pursuit. Publications began documenting. Dealers compiled fixed price lists. Auction houses recognized that early federal coinage carried historical gravity. As collectors examined the early half-dimes, patterns emerged. The 1792 half-dime stood apart immediately. Its tiny mintage and direct link to the founding generation elevated it beyond simple currency. It was not just silver. It was a relic of the Republic's infancy. In January 2013, at a Heritage Auctions sale in Orlando, the 1792 half-dime graded MS-64 by PCGs realized $1,145,625. The price did not erupt suddenly. It climbed through competitive bidding, each increment acknowledging more than condition. Buyers were weighing origin, symbolism, and survival rate. Only a fraction of the original estimated mintage remains today. Each surviving specimen carries the tension of those first uncertain months at the Philadelphia Mint. When the hammer fell above $1 million, it confirmed that the coin's earliest experiment in sovereignty had become a cornerstone of American collecting. The draped bust and flowing hair issues followed a similar arc. For decades, they traded quietly among specialists. Then census data revealed just how few high-grade survivors existed. Many early half-dimes had circulated heavily, their details softened by years of exchange. Mint state examples became rare by simple arithmetic. In April 2005, a 1796 draped bust half-dime graded MS-65 sold at a Stax auction for $322,000. The price reflected scarcity within scarcity. While thousands may have been struck, only a small handful survived in near pristine condition. The coin's past service in daily commerce had erased most competitors. Ware became the silent architect of value. The 1802 half-dime tells an even sharper story. Official records show a mintage of 3,060 pieces. For years, some scholars debated whether that figure included coins struck from leftover dies. Regardless of accounting nuance, surviving examples remain exceptionally few. In August 2012, Heritage Auction sold an 1802 half-dime graded Ms. 664 $470,000. The cause of its premium was clear. Limited production combined with heavy early circulation created extreme rarity and high grade. Collectors recognized that they were not simply purchasing silver. They were acquiring survival against probability. The Seated Liberty series introduced another layer of complexity. Branch mints in New Orleans and San Francisco struck half-dimes during the mid-19th century, adding regional character. Some issues were struck in modest numbers, others in greater quantity, yet survival patterns varied widely. The 1870 Seated Liberty half-dime, produced at the San Francisco Mint with a mintage of only 20,000 pieces, became a key rarity. Auction rooms amplify tension in ways that printed price guides cannot. Bidders sit quietly, eyes fixed on a coin that once passed anonymously between strangers. Specialists know population reports. They understand die varieties. Yet in the final moments before the hammer falls, emotion enters the equation. Ownership of a half-dime often means possession of the earliest chapter of federal coinage. Each increment bid represents not only financial calculation, but historical connection. Private sales reinforced that gravity. In 2016, a privately negotiated transaction for a top-graded 1797 half-dime reportedly $700,000. While exact terms remain confidential, market observers noted the convergence of rarity, eye appeal, and early date significance. Dealers who handle such pieces describe a pattern. Advanced collectors seek coins with provenance. Documented ownership chains stretching back decades. A half-dime, traced to a 19th century cabinet, carries added narrative weight. Provenance complicates decisions. It turns acquisition into stewardship. As values escalated, grading standards tightened. A single-point difference on the grading scale could mean tens of thousands of dollars. That precision echoes the Mint's original struggle for weight accuracy. In the 18th century, fractions of a gram mattered for credibility. In modern auctions, fractions of a grade determine premium. The conflict between measurement and perception continues in a different form. The market also reveals an instructive pattern. Not every half-dime commands six figures. Many Seated Liberty examples and circulated condition trade within reach of dedicated hobbyists. This layered market sustains interest. Entry-level collectors begin with affordable dates. Over time, knowledge deepens. Advanced specialists compete for condition rarities. The structure mirrors the coin's original function. It served ordinary transactions before entering elite cabinets. Accessibility and exclusivity coexist. Economic cycles influence auction results as well. During periods of financial uncertainty, tangible assets often attract capital. Rare coins, especially early federal issues, are perceived as portable stores of value. When inflation concerns rise or equity markets fluctuate, bidding activity can intensify. To have dime once hoarded during the Panic of 1837 and the Civil War, now experiences renewed attention during modern volatility. History repeats in different contexts. Metal still offers psychological reassurance, yet the half-dime's legacy extends beyond price realization. It occupies a pivotal position in American monetary evolution. It represents the early reliance on intrinsic silver. It demonstrates the limits of fixed ratios in a global market. It reflects legislative adaptation from the Coinage Act of 1792 through the reforms of 1853 and the restructuring of 1873. Collectors who study dime marriages and mint reports inevitably confront broader economic history. The coin becomes a gateway into debates about federal authority, bullion policy, and industrial modernization. Museums reinforce that perspective. Institutions, such as the Smithsonian, display early half-dimes, not merely as collectibles, but as artifacts of governance. Visitors observe their small diameter and often express surprise. How could something so small carry such weight in national development? The answer lies in context. In an era without digital transfers or standardized banking, a 5-cent silver piece enabled countless transactions. It anchored trust. That trust built markets. Those markets supported expansion. Modern collectors often speak of holding a 1792 half-dime as holding a fragment of the founding era. The connection is tactile. The coin's edges may show faint wear. Its surfaces may reflect early striking irregularities. Those imperfections testify to manual processes and experimental equipment. Perfection was never its defining trait. Survival was. The arc from circulation to cabinet reveals transformation. At first, the half-dime's disappearance from commerce signaled inconvenience. Later, its absence created rarity. Rarity fostered desire. Desire generated competition. Competition established record prices. Each stage flowed from the previous one. No single decision guaranteed its modern prestige. It emerged from decades of economic adjustment and human behavior. Today, population reports suggest that fewer than 300 examples of the 1792 half-dime survive, in all grades combined. High-grade pieces number in the dozens. Such figures intensify bidding. Collectors recognize finite supply. Unlike modern commemoratives, these coins cannot be reached. Their survival ceiling is fixed by history itself. And so the half-dime stands in the auction spotlight not as a minor denomination, but as a foundational artifact. It began as a tool of commerce in a fragile republic. It endured policy missteps, bullion crises, and war-driven hoarding. It surrendered its place to industrial practicality. Irreverent, it gained reverence. When a rare specimen crosses the block and the auctioneer's hammer falls, the sound echoes beyond the room. It affirms that the earliest expressions of American monetary authority still command attention. The coin that once purchased bread now secures a place in climate-controlled vaults. Its journey from market stall to multi-million-dollar platform traces the evolution of the nation itself. Collectors who pursue the half-dime are not chasing size. They are chasing origin. They are acquiring a witness to constitutional ambition, financial experimentation, and legislative reform. Each piece carries intention stamped into silver. Each carries conflict, absorbed over decades. Each carries consequence, measured in scarcity. And as new generations discover early U.S. coinage, the half-dime continues to speak softly yet firmly. It reminds observers that power can reside in small forms. It demonstrates that stability must be engineered, tested, and sometimes corrected. It proves that survival, even more than beauty, creates value. The half-dime no longer circulates in American pockets. Yet in auction halls and private collections, it circulates in narrative and prestige. Its silver surface reflects the ambitions of 1792 and the competitive bids of the present day. In that reflection, the early republic remains visible, steady and deliberate. If this journey through America's first silver 5-cent piece has deepened your appreciation for the foundations of U.S. coinage, consider supporting the channel. Like, subscribe, share this expedition with fellow collectors, and leave a comment about which early half-dime fascinates you most. Each discussion continues the story.